Hey, folks, on today's Rebels Edge live from the iconic USS Intrepid aircraft carrier here in New York City, traders are watching for NVIDIA's earnings after the bell. Will they beat as the street's expecting? Target completely misses the target as they announce earnings. And woof, one of our favorite stocks, pet lovers, sending Petco shares even higher. And we'll ask, how will the Timberwolves pan out when they face off against Dallas in an iconic 20-year matchup coming up on the Rebels Edge?
We are coming to you live from the Intrepid, and Marc's got guys coming up asking him for autographs. I mean, what the hell? God, I love it. I love it.
We're here, Pete. It's day 2 of the Battlefin Conference. That's, of course, the data company that you and Jon are invested in. I crashed our friends at AYU. Shout out to them. I'm not going to put the hat on, but it's going to screw up my hair. But these guys are one of the highest quality family office organizations. Jon and I get asked to speak at a lot of these things. We got that going on. We got Battlefin. I got Fleet Week in the background. Aircraft carriers, frigates, destroyers. There's a lot happening here in the west side of New York City today, and it's always fun to come and address the Rebel Nation from cool locations like this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love it. Meanwhile, I'm in Minnesota. We got tornadoes going left and right just below us. I mean, it's kind of exciting here too, but it is what it is. So we'll get our way through this whole thing. Anyway, Marc, let's hit it right out of the gate because I think we got a lot to cover and we got only so much time. So we're going to hit a macro minute. Now, I'm going to kick it off with this. The earnings from NVIDIA are probably as macro as it gets because everybody is staring at one thing, that name right now. I mean, there's nowhere else to look. We already got Target in front of us, but that wouldn't even come close anyway. We've got NVIDIA after the close. People are all wondering, what will he do? He thinks he's Stephen Jobs. I'm going to go out there and say that. You're not quite Stephen Jobs, even though you wear the black jacket, but I can tell you this, you've been doing a lot of great things, and NVIDIA is probably going to crush it, but that's something we're waiting to see. But either way, I think it's very macro in terms of what happens with the markets after those earnings come out.
Yeah, I totally agree. The street is almost unanimously looking not only for them to beat the top and bottom line, but also to even improve their forward-looking guidance. Maybe an announcement coming in addition to this earnings call. Very interesting to see, but very unusual, Pete, that a single name like this one is carrying the fortunes of the broader market on its back in this fashion.
Yeah, and that's all because of the AI world and everybody. When you say AI, you say NVIDIA. So that's just what it is. All right, how about these fantastic futures? Now, we've had a lot of fun with this. We've been moving around, and there's a lot of different things. But I will tell you this. For me, I've talked about volatility forever. Ever since I got on CNBC back in 2007, that was one of the points that I needed to get across each and every day. And I think it's important here. So now we're moving this segment a little bit where I'm covering more on volatility. So how about this, Marc? On Friday, we closed below 12. We were at 11.99, so it's not very good. It's pretty damn close, but nonetheless, under 12. On Monday, we closed at 12.15. Tuesday, 11.85. Today, we're sitting somewhere between 11.89 and 12.19. Now, volatility that low, that tells me a lot of people are very interested, and I would say this, buy protection while you can. When I see volatility get to these levels, I start thinking about the opportunities to the upside, and the coverage gets a little bit cheaper to the downside. So just keep an eye on that volatility because we're down here at the lows of the year right now.
Yeah, and Pete, I wonder if that's in part because there's so many people sitting on their hands waiting for this NVIDIA earnings release, not to go back to our previous segment. But I'm looking in fantastic futures. I'm watching what's going on in copper, and it is truly a tale of two markets. There's plenty of it in certain overseas places like China. There's an abundance of it there. But unfortunately, there was a bit of a short squeeze being set up here on the CME. And now I'm hearing traders tell me that they're actually scrambling to bring physical, because as you know, in those futures contracts, you can call physical delivery. I remember the story of somebody sending several hundred steer of cattle to somebody's front lawn in a very poor prank of traders on the CME some years ago. So I'm watching copper. That's my fantastic future. We could see this thing come back to last week's levels after the short squeeze plays out.
Yep, I like it. I think that's a great call. All right, let's just jump into these stocks and earnings and everything that's going on. We're going to start with Williams with an S, Williams Sonoma, right? Now, this one, did they crush it? They absolutely crushed it. Now, crushing it has a different meaning these days because we have lowered the bar lower and lower and lower. And when you look at the earnings, Mark, we're looking at about an 82 to an 85% beat on earnings and oftentimes the revenue as well, top and bottom, as we like to call it. Well, that's not different for Williams Sonoma. They crushed it. They put up a number, 407. They were looking for 273. So I would say that counts as crushing it. What about this, though, Mark? They also decreased year over year by 5.5%. So we have lowered this bar, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. And that's probably why this stock was ripping to the upside right after this earnings, because that looked like a powerful number. Everybody kind of liked what they had to say. They talked about the margins and everything else. Well, problem is this. They hit 52-week highs. They actually hit all-time highs, and then things started to turn to the downside. Now, this is a stock that's already today probably been in something close to about a 40-point range, but it's dropped below 300. I think it was 345 on the highs. Doesn't really matter. Either way, they went from being up 8% to down 8% in a hurry. And I think a lot of this has to do with people finally realizing, hey, what's the real number, though? What is the real number? You beat earnings, but you're still significantly down from last year. So that's what I'm seeing out of Williams Sonoma.
Yeah, I mean, listen, tell Jared to cue the Pharrell Williams Blurred Lines, one of my favorite songs, because that's what I think of when I read this earnings report. And this also tells our viewers, again, about the power of what's not just the numbers, how they're presented, and the importance of guidance. These guys made lemonade out of lemons, Pete, by and large. The year-over-year out numbers were not great. And I'm a little curious about why they're so rosy in their forward-looking. People don't need stuff that Williams Sonoma makes. You could buy just about anything there at a cheaper price if you need something for your kitchen or your bathroom. So I'm a little dubious on this one.
I hear you. All right, let's jump to Target, because that is the big one. You know, a lot of us are looking at different names. Obviously, Walmart, Target, and some of these names are very important. We're really interested to see what they have to say. It was a mixed report coming from Target. They did guide, but the guide was not something that everybody wanted to embrace, Mark. Matter of fact, when you miss on the guidance, that's even much more important than missing on your earnings, missing on your revenues. That's a real problem. And that's what they actually delivered. Now, this is a stock that had made an incredible move to the upside over this last period of time in the last quarter or so. But now looking at the stock, it's down anywhere close. Maybe it's 7%. Maybe it's even a little bit more. Huge volumes. We're talking about 9 million shares in the first 90 minutes of the day. The average for the whole day has been about 3.8 million. So a lot of volume, a lot of turnover. I got this one to throw out to you, though. Everybody compares these two, and they shouldn't, but we do. So comparing the comp sales of Target, were down about 3.7% year over year. The comp sales for Walmart were up 3.8% year over year. I think that says almost everything about where people are going, the stickiness of the trade down for Walmart. It is more grocery than Target. Target's got 5 different elements that you can go to, but when you talk about Walmart, we're talking 52% of the revenue is in the grocery section. So if they are different companies when it comes to that, but it's also different companies because Walmart's crushing it and Target needs to figure out a way to get people back in the store because we're seeing declines there.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, Pete, I think it's really a matter of Target, in my humble opinion, being a little bit more of an accurate gauge of the condition of the U.S. consumer. It used to be you could look at both of those names to get an idea of how the American consumer is faring in this continued inflationary environment, credit card levels. We talk about that ad infinitum. I won't go over it again today. But Walmart clearly doing a better job attracting more customers. And even as you and I said when we did our all 3 live from Cardone Studios last week, and boy, was that a lot of fun. We're going to have to do that again. Yeah. Walmart's been doing a great job of attracting the bougie Birkin set, right, into their aisle 5 sales. Target, less so. So interesting to see how Target's faring today in trading after announcing this very disappointing earnings call.
Yeah, getting beat up pretty good. It's too bad for them, but they weren't able to get those numbers, and now they're going to cut 5,000 different items in terms of prices. So we'll see if that helps at all, or it's definitely not going to help margins. I can tell you that side. All right, Analog Devices is up next. Now, chip maker. We are all focused on NVIDIA, but this is a company that absolutely, I mean, I use the expression crushing it. They did crush it. You take a look at these numbers, Mark. They beat on their earnings, $1.40 versus 126. They beat on a lot of the different other areas that we all talk about. We talk about sales. That was $2.16 billion. They were looking for 2.11, so they beat on that. The guidance was the most important thing always. The guidance was strong as well from the analysts' point of view, from where they were. Their guidance was well above that, so that's another thing. I'll tell you what, they did everything that you would want them to do if you're a bull in this stock, you're holding these shares. This thing ran all the way up to $234 a share. That's a 52-week high as well. So they have done everything right. They're hitting those highs, and they're holding on to it. They're not like Williams-Sonoma where they're flipping around. These numbers, I think, really did echo for a lot of people. And I'm telling you, they have been absolutely killing it so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, I still like this stock even at these loftier prices. Not only do they seem to be doing everything right from the C-suite perspective, but the supply chain concerns have completely eased at this point. They are seeing increased demand from some key sectors for the chips that they make, like the automotive sector. Interesting is what that may be a harbinger of automotive sales for next year as the big manufacturers gear up by buying more chips from companies like ADI. I like this one, Pete, for sure.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All right, next up, we're going to go with Wolf. For the people who don't know who that is, that's actually Petco. So makes a lot of sense, right? Animals and everything else, and health and wealth and all that kind of stuff. Well, their earnings actually were a little bit better than they were expected to be, but they lowered the bar, so that helped. What I think is actually happening here, Mark, stock's up 28%. The stock is just off of the 52-week lows. The lows are $2.70. And that's where, well, it's actually $1.40. Today they're trading around $2.70, up a little bit above $3. By the way, 974 is the 52-week high. So they're a lot closer to the lows than they are the highs. But they have massive short interest here. And when I say massive, 33% short on the float. So this is one of those where, is it partially kind of like a meme stock? Is it one of those where you've got enough of a short that there's a bit of a squeeze? And they did have some positive numbers, better numbers than expected, but that again was a lowered bar. So I wouldn't go chasing after this one just yet, Mark. How about you?
Yeah, agreed. And look, it was again sort of mixed signals, guidance lowered. So when you underpromise and overdeliver, this is when you can get sort of this kind of volatility in a stock. I mean, gross profit fell 4% quarter over quarter. That's not a great sign. And the EBITDA was down too, $75 million versus $110 million on a year-over-year basis. It's not something to bark about, certainly not positively. And Pete, before we go to sports, I want to just cover something real quick. We've been covering the BNPL, buy now, pay later space. I'm talking about Affirm. I'm talking about Klarna. I'm talking about even PayPal and Apple. We had some pretty interesting regulatory changes in the last 24 hours. Basically, the government saying that BNPL companies are subject to the same consumer protections that old school lenders, credit card companies have to provide to consumers. The BNPL sector selling off a little bit on this news, but I think this is a long-term positive for that sector. This is one of those areas where a little bit more regulation is probably a good thing, and it's also going to bring the data that we want into the fore. We didn't know. This is sort of a dark pool of consumer debt, how much people were racking up on the buy now, pay later lenders. This regulation is going to give us that visibility, so we'll have a true understanding of the status of the credit card and consumer debt being racked up by folks in this country. It was an interesting and an important development. I wanted to cover that real quick before we talk about, what are we going to talk about, Pete?
We're going to hit the NIL. I'm going to tell you this. When we hit sports, why I'm interested in talking about this NIL today, Mark, this has really turned into something that I warned people about a couple of years ago. And I warned them, I said, look, what if I'm an investor? I got $10 million. I'm feeling pretty good about myself and everything. So sure, I'm going to give my old school $1 million for the NIL. Let's try to get some players, right? Well, what if by any chance, what if I got caught on the wrong side of some trades and now I don't have that 10 million? I don't have the $1 million that I want to give to the school. And now all of a sudden you've promised somebody, some player, the ability to have that kind of money. Well, I'm not saying that's how this whole thing played out, but a Florida quarterback. Now, this kid went to IMG. He's from California. He's really outstanding. Jaden Rashada is his name. He goes to the University of Florida. They give him $13.85 million over 4 years to come there, Mark. And they said on signing day, we'll give you $1 million. Well, he didn't get anything on signing day. He's got no money. They never paid him. And now he's moved again. He's at a different school. He said, this isn't right. Now he's going to the University of Georgia. But all that being said, I have been wondering, when are we going to see this happen? Because it's only a matter of time, and now it's right in front of us in a big way. All you've got to do is go into the NIL world or whatever of sports stories right now. You're going to find this one. And I always wondered, when is this going to happen? And what can they possibly do about it? What is the promissory? I mean, I know you're a lawyer, but I don't expect that you'd have to be able to dive into this whole thing. But I will say this. It's something that I've always wondered, when will this happen? How will this actually play out? And it's not playing out very well right now for this young man who is given, hey, you're getting $1 million, you're getting 13.8, and oh, by the way, it's not there. Sorry.
Yeah, that is a terrible outcome for this kid, and I hope he finds the love that he deserves from his new school. But look, Pete, I don't see the leagues getting involved at all. They're not parties to these agreements. I don't think that these things have been reduced to promissory notes, right? I think it's just like breach of contract type claims. So I don't think it's going to be any recourse beyond possibly seeing lawsuits from these athletes against the universities and the athletic programs for breach of contract, which may or may not ultimately go anywhere. But this is probably the first of others that we'll see as the NIL phenomenon continues to proliferate throughout college athletics.
Right. I mean, we've got NIL, we've got the portal, we've got all this stuff. They've turned it into professional football, truly. And it's I see a lot of negatives that come along with that whole thing. So I don't think this is the first or the last, and it's going to be something that plays out in front of us even more. All right, jump to the NBA real quick. We always love to talk a little bit about these sports, but right now we are getting to the point where it's gotten pretty daggone interesting. I mean, the Timberwolves are out there, and they played amazingly well. They came back from the largest deficit. John and I talked about that the other day. But here's the interesting thing, Mark. Now they've got to go up against Dallas, and they've got some superstars on that team as well. But I think it's going to be pretty daggone exciting. If anybody got a chance to watch last night, Boston against Indiana, that game had to go to overtime. Boston did win it, but they had to go to overtime. These are some really, really great games and a great time of the year for the NBA, and I think the NBA is pretty excited about what they've got in front of them right now. What I like about my Timberwolves, this game is tonight. It's going to be on TNT. What I like about the Timberwolves is this. We've got 3 bigs. Now, when I say bigs, I'm talking about guys that are either close to 7 feet or over 7 feet tall. But we've got 3 of them that can run the court. Now, Kyrie Irving, heck of a player, right? And then all of a sudden you take a look at some of the rest of the players on Dallas. Luka Doncic is definitely an amazing player, great basketball player. I just think that this is going to be one of these where the Timberwolves were looking at OKC. Everybody thought they were going to win it. They had the best shooters. They had the height. They had all this different stuff going in their favor. It didn't happen for them, and they lost to Dallas. So this could be pretty fun. Now, do you have any predictions on who you think is going to the NBA Finals itself? I mean, is it going to be Boston and Minnesota, or who do you think?
I like Minnesota's chances, Pete, and it's not because you sent me a check to say that, which I think a lot of people might suspect. But no, that's where my money is. And look, I think everybody is going to be watching. This is an epic matchup. First time, if I'm not mistaken, in 20 years that they've advanced to this stage of the finals. So must see TV tonight in the NBA for sure.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Kevin Garnett might even show up. And the people who don't know this whole story, he was on that team 20 years ago. He's also a guy who doesn't like the ownership at all, doesn't ever come back to Minnesota because of that. So he's got some bad blood going there. But everybody says he's got a podcast. He said, I'm coming. So take him at his word. The one thing I'll leave you with is this. So it's really fun because Anthony Edwards is not afraid to drop F-bombs and everything else. He's a fun kid, though. He's a kid, Mark. He's been in the NBA 3-4 years. He's 22 years old, for God's sakes. I mean, this guy is the most electric, most fun kid you can be around. His energy is there. And he made the statement the other day to Charles Barkley. He told him, he goes, hey, get y'all over here to Minnesota. So now everybody has taken that, and that is going to be all over the place tonight. If you watch the game, you will see people with banners that say, get y'all's ass over here, because he lit it up. Everybody loved it. They understand it might be a little crude for somebody, whoever, but it's now the slogan of the Timberwolves. And I'm telling you, they're taking it and running with it right now. It's going to be fun.
I can hear the T-shirt printing presses going as we speak. And to our producer, Jared, I apologize. You don't have the censor button ready, but I accidentally dropped an F-bomb last week on the show. You're saying ass right and left. This is maybe PG 17. I don't know whatever the rating is now, but we're definitely going into dangerous territory here.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Mark, thank you so much. I know John's, traveling all over the world like he always is, so he's somewhere else, parts unknown, but thank you for making the time. We really appreciate it. And from the Intrepid, which is absolutely incredible. I've been there before. Really one of the most amazing museums we could ever go to, because now it's, I think, officially a museum right there on the water. Pretty exciting. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, man. Folks, we'll see you again tomorrow, 1 p.m.